I planned, after my first voyage, to spend the rest of my days at Baghdad. But it was not long before I grew weary of a quiet life. My desire to trade and travel was revived. I bought goods suited to the commerce and set sail. We traded from island to island and exchanged commodities with great profit. One day we landed on an island covered with several sorts of fruit trees, but so uninhabited that we could see neither man nor beast upon it. We went to take a little fresh air in the meadows and along the streams that watered them, while some busied themselves with gathering flowers and others with gathering fruits. I took my provisions and sat down by a stream between two great trees which formed a curious shape. I had a very good meal and afterwards fell asleep. I cannot tell how long I slept, but when I awoke, the ship was gone. I was very surprised to find the ship gone. I got up and looked about, and at last I perceived the ship under sail, but at such a distance that I lost sight of her in a very little time. I was so melancholic that I was ready to die with grief. I cried out sadly, beat my head and breast, and threw myself down upon the ground, where I lay some time in a terrible agony. At last I resigned myself to my fate, and not knowing what to do, I climbed up to the top of a great tree, from whence I looked about on all sides to see if there was anything that could give me hope. When I looked towards the sea, I could see nothing but sky and water. But looking towards the land, I saw something white, and, coming down from the tree, I took up what provision I had left and went towards it, the distance being so great that I could not distinguish what it was. When I came nearer, I thought it to be a white bowl of a prodigious height and bigness, and when I came up to it, I touched it, and found it to be very smooth. I went round to see if it was open on any side, but saw it was not, and that there was no climbing up to the top of it, it was so smooth. It was at least 50 paces round. By this time the sun was ready to set, and all of a sudden the sky became as dark as if it had been covered with a thick cloud. I was astonished at this sudden darkness, but much more when I found it was the shadow of a bird of a monstrous size that came flying towards me. I remembered a fowl called roc that I'd often heard mariners speak of. At once I realized that the great bowl, which I so much admired, was its egg. In short, the bird lighted and sat over the egg to hatch it. As I perceived her coming, I crept close to the egg. When the bird landed, one of the legs of the bird, which was as big as the trunk of a tree, was very close to me. I tied myself strongly to it with my turban, in the hope that when the roc flew away next morning, she would carry me with her out of this desert island. And after having passed the night in this condition, the bird really flew away next morning, as soon as it was day, and carried me so high that I could not see the earth. Then she descended all of a sudden, with so much rapidity that I lost my senses. But then the roc settled, and I found myself upon the ground. I speedily untied the knot. I had scarcely done so, when the bird, having taken up a serpent of a monstrous length in her bill, flew away. The place where she left me was a very deep valley, surrounded on all sides with mountains, so high that they seemed to reach above the clouds, and so full of steep rocks that there was no possibility of getting out of the valley. This was a new perplexity, because when I compared this place with the desert island from which the roc brought me, I found that I had gained nothing by the change.